take the first sim. Okay. Before I even start reading, I'll try to figure out how big the sim is. Okay. Okay. So they've given me one data. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 uh, cells that I'll have to fill up in this sim. So every cell is important. Okay. This is not a intense sim as far as quantity, but for data that to be filled up, this is a good sim. Then they've given me some other data and then they've given me annexures. Okay. So there's a couple, Stephen and Beth Smith. I've retained you to prepare the year 5, 1040 US individual tax return. Now, the first thing that I want you to do is in your mind, try to demarcate the same. Oh, this is DRS. Oh, this is DRS review. Oh, this is DRS, but DRS diagnostics. Oh, this is IRC reference. Oh, this is application scale. You would be able to do that if you have been practicing since enough. Okay. The couple are married and support Beth's 2 children from a previous marriage, Terry Jones and Madison Jones. So there's a couple, and that couple is filing an MFJ return, and they have 2 children who was from one of the spouse's previous marriage. Okay. In year 5, okay, so this is year 5. So I understand that year 5 is a current year. This is really, really important, guys. Okay, because if you recall, sometimes, now see, they cannot make the paper difficult. An average student who's put in effort would be able to clear the paper. The only 2 constraints that you have here is first is time. First is time, and second is trap. Okay, be aware of the time and the trap. Okay, if you're able to do that, manage yourself in that time. And of course, the trap will not just mean the intellectual trap, the trap would also include the emotional trap, which is they're trying to give you the longest sims at the time when you're least prepared for it, when you're really in a hurry, or when you're really going very high, they're going to give you a spirit dampener right in between. Very rarely will you come up with students telling you that a very difficult sim was given in the fag end of the paper. They would never do that. Okay. So time and trap, these are the only 2 things that you've got to be bothered about. Okay. So be very careful. Okay, most sims understand everybody would be able to. So slow down, automatically understand that there are traps in the sim. One of the most common trap is a year. They'll give you some other year data and then they will try to push you towards answering it incorrect. Okay, so in year 5, which is the current year, the couple will file jointly. So they've already told me it's a married filing jointly couple. I'm going to take the standard deduction. They've already told me no itemized deduction. So the moment I know no itemized deduction, now 2 CMs for ITO goes for a toss. They also took the standard deduction on the year 4 tax return. Okay, the moment I hear this, what is it that I should be alert about? The moment they tell me that last year also they took standard deduction, what is it that I have to be alert about, guys? Anybody? Anything? Any bell rings the moment I hear about last year's tax return? Very good. No. So who was this? Ritika. Very good. Tax returns, tax refunds. Okay. The moment I hear this, I need to know the moment they give you tax refund, I'm going to ignore it because last year they did not itemize. So this year I'm not going to get any benefit. Even if any benefit is there, it is not going to be taxable. So remember that any kind of a refund of state taxes would be non-taxable. The moment you take note of this, now either you write it on a pen of paper or do something so that it just registers in your memory. The exhibits contain a letter from Stephen, okay, so one of the taxpayers, and copies of the tax forms that Stephen and Beth received for year 5. So here's a novice, they want to file their return, they're asking for your help. You're a CPA or a budding CPA, whatever, and at the same time, they're giving you the data. You're supposed to review the client letter. So they've given me a cover letter where they've given me all the happenings for a particular year and they've attached all the source documents that they feel is relevant for them to help you file their return. For each of the reportable items listed in column A, now this part is very, very important. Go slow. Tell your mind, read slowly. Don't rush. Sometimes just give you some data here which may be important. Enter the amount of income and deductions that should be reported on Stephen and Beth's year 5, 10, 40 in calculating quote unquote AGI. So here we are not going to go to itemized deduction. We are restricting ourselves to AGI. Enter all amounts as positive whole numbers. The moment I know this, I know there should not be decimals. If the response is 0, enter a 0. The moment I hear this, I know don't leave a cell blank. I cannot do that. Okay, so no negative. So positive, whole numbers, no negatives, whole numbers, no decimals, 0, no cell blanks. Remember, there's a black box who'll be checking your answers. Okay, so if it is you're very intelligent, but the black box is below you. So remember that, then you have to file up the right data. Otherwise, the black box will ignore the data. Okay, now look at the data that has been provided. So you were supposed to fill up the wages, you're supposed to fill up the interest, the dividend, the refund. Okay, the moment I hear this, before even answering anything, I filled up one data. Can you see this? Now, maybe it means be some other data for some other tax year, but in my mind, I know this can be 0. I'm not asking you to fill it up right away. Review it, but in your mind, I know the answer is 0. And then there's something which is gambling it. So this looks like a really easy sim, guys. So this is the letter. Okay, the dates are important. So very, very important are the dates. So if it's a communication, so that's an external communication because the client is giving to the tax preparer, tax return preparer, or the taxpayer, or the tax practitioner, and they're doing it before the return filing date. What is the return filing date for an individual taxpayer? The return filing date for an individual taxpayer? Everybody? So it's before the return filing date. Very good. I have enclosed the following information relating to our year 5 tax return. There is a W-2 from Maspeth Associates LLC for my employment. So this was the husband, if you recall, as an architect. I elected to defer $10,000 to my employer-sponsored 401k plan. Okay, let me see what is this. Okay, which data am I going to take? So can you see what he's saying? That he earned 85,000. He put 10,000 in 401k and he received $75,000 in as the figure net of deduction. So what figure are we going to take as his wages, guys? So this is the husband, this is the wife. What is the figure that I'm going to take for the husband? Anybody? What is the wage figure that I'm going to take for the husband? Is it 85,000 or is it 75,000? How much has he earned? Okay. Now here the key thing. The figure that goes and gets reported in wages is not 85K. It is 75K. Please remember that the figure that will get reported is not 85K. It is the figure net of the deduction. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want you guys to register. The same thing they can give you in the diagnostics. Same situation. The same sim I can convert into a diagnostic sim where I'll give you all the data and I'll give you incorrect figures. And now you have to tell me what should be the correct figure. Okay? So be mindful. The same question, we are discussing it as a review because it's a little more difficult. But sometimes I give you a diagnostics and this can completely confuse you. All you need to know is what should be the real thing and then look at what the client has done and then correct it. Don't go the other way around. Don't go and find out first what the client has done wrong because in that case, you would probably get confused. Okay, so the first thing is it's not the figure before the deduction, it's the figure after the deduction. Then we go to the next one. This is the data so we've already finished. The key to solving a sim fast and in time is to see that you avoid repetition. Okay, so it's not a bad job to have a pen and paper and make certain notes when you're doing the sim so that it becomes easier for you to not go back and revisit the data again. They've also given you the W-2 for Framework Corps for Bethel. So now this is the wife's return as the office manager. So when the wife is working, there is no withdrawal, there's no contribution to 401k for the wife. And here there's no ambiguity. We're going to take the full 32,000. Okay, so we are done with this. There is a form 1099 INT from Springville National Bank showing interest earned on my savings account. Also, I earned $50 in interest when I cashed in matured Series AE US savings bond. Okay. So we have done this. In your mind, take note. This has been done. This has been done. You're not going to come back to it again unless and until, see, in this sim, I know we're not going to go to the itemized deduction. We're going to limit ourselves to the AGI. So I'm not even going to be bothered about the taxes and stuff. Now see, the state income tax otherwise becomes important, but here we're not going to take any care of it, right? Now we go to Springville Family Restaurant. I don't know what is this. Oh, this is Terry Joe's. What is this, guys? Can anybody tell me what is this? We've not come across this yet. So I'll just register. There's another W2 given. I don't know it yet. So I'm going to skip this and go to the interest file. Maybe no, it was not family business, Mitali, right? Because one is an architect and the other is an office manager. They've not given you any data. I know this seems like a child, but right now I'm not going to bother myself. I'm not going to change the flow of my thought. I've read the third thing, which was interest. So this is interest income. I know it will be taxable. What about this, guys? Will this be taxable? I just run through any other data. See, there is no other source of data. So I know that I earned 150 from a bank, which is Springville National Bank. But out of this 150, I know the taxable interest ideally is $100. This is Series EE interest, which was $50. Am I going to pay tax on this interest? Yes, no. What do you say? Okay, 50 is exempt if spent on education. Do you get any details about if spent on education? Anybody? Have they given you any details about if spent on education? This is interest, dividends earned or investment, casino-based income tax. I have also included Form W2 from Springwell Family Restaurant for our daughter Terry. Terry turned 17 last summer and worked as a server during her summer vacation. No, so they have not given me any data about the use of that $50. Is it taxable? Yes, no. You have only one answer. You cannot give me both the answers because the data will be wrong. That cell will be filled up incorrectly. Am I going to tax it? Yes, no. Everybody? So stay with the question. Stay with the question. The rule says Series EE bond interest is not taxable if used for qualified higher education expenses. They have not given me any data about the use of those $50. So what do? I am going to tax it. As simple as that. This is taxable in my hand. This becomes 150. So what we've done, innately, the moment I see Series E, I'm going to make it tax-free. Don't do that. They have tried to lay a trap. Don't be caught by the trap. So I know so long as I have 150 as taxable income. And I have finished the use of the third data. Go to the next one. Consolidated Form 1099 from Springwell Brokerage House showing interest and dividends earned on our investment account. So here we have an investment account with the bank, and the bank has given me a consolidated 1099. Can you see 1099s are all given by people who have otherwise given you money, right? So this is given to the client. This is for year 5. So please don't assume anything. Before you look at particular, any document, please verify everything. Okay. So this is a brokerage house. Now tell me how much of this data. So there are two data. First of all, if there are more than one pages, try to correlate the pages amongst themselves. Okay. So what is happening? There's an interest income. There's a tax exempt interest income. Now see the same data here. I can ask you to give me gross income. I can also ask you to give me a working paper before that, which will take all the figures, put it into taxable and tax-free, excluded, included, and then come up with the data that we need on the front page. So the same data can be questioned in a number of ways. And it should not disturb you whether that the testing is in Form 1 or Form 2 versus Form 3. The same data I can answer in 100 ways. So I can make a sim in 100 ways possible. All that you need to know is a very solid concept and the interpretation of data, a cool mind, and correlating data. Okay? So here I know this Taxable, non-taxable. Nothing here. But I have some dividends, which seems the entire dividend was qualified dividend. What is this non-dividend distribution, guys? Can anybody tell me? What is this non-dividend distribution? What is this non-dividend distribution? Very good. Very, very good. This is return on capital. Taxable, non-taxable, taxable, non-taxable, non-taxable. So same figure, same details, but I would have asked you to give me included, excluded income, and then I would have asked you to fill up this form. That's possible, right? So I'm going to ignore this data here. Then there's foreign taxes paid, and then there was a federal income tax with nothing. So you've paid some foreign taxes. So it appears as if some of this data is coming from foreign sources, okay? So let's look at this 3400 data. Okay, I have this dividend. 1800 is foreign, 1600 is domestic. Total dividend is 3400, on which there was a tax paid of $360. Tell me how much of this dividend is going to be taxable. Tell me how much of this dividend is going to be taxable in my hand. 3400, 1600. How much? 3400 or 1600? There are only two options. How much? Where did you get 43? Okay. 34. Anybody with 1600 as an answer? Anybody with 1600 is the answer? P. Not all foreign corporations are deemed not qualifying for qualifying dividend. They will tell you there are exceptions in this area. So in this example, they've already told you that they are not. So this is qualified. I'm not interested in why is it qualified. Remember, generally it's domestic, but there are some eligible foreign corporations also who can give you dividend, which can be technically termed as qualified. So this 3400 is also taxable. So from this data, what do I get? What do I get here? Can anybody tell me from the data that we just showed? The interest income was 120. The dividend income was 3400. See, so fast. If you look at it, this entire sum could have been finished. So we've finished this. Okay. So we've finished W2 wages of the husband, W2 wages of the wife. We still don't know what is this. We're going to get back to this when the data comes in. We have taken the interest income of 150, the Series E bonds interest I'm not ignoring. I've already taken the dividend and interest I've earned from a brokerage house. Now I go to gambling winnings. I've earned $5,000 by gambling, on which I've paid 20% of taxes. And is it me? The answer is yes. It's my wife who has earned this for the year 5. I am not going to assume anything, guys. Please check the date, check the year, check the recipient so that everything should tally. Okay, so this is a form which is called Form W2G. It comes whenever money is being paid to the winner. In fact, today in the morning itself, I was hearing a very good podcast about. Do you know what's the lottery capital of US? Anybody? Any guesses? Which is a state which first started legalized gambling in the US? Anybody? It's Massachusetts. And do you know per person per year how much is it that people are spending in Massachusetts for lottery? Take a guess. $100 per person. Imagine I take the full population of Massachusetts and I say for 1 year, one person would be spending how much in buying lottery tickets, cash cards, and all of those gambling kind of stuff. That figure is $1,037 per year per person for a small state in the US, which is Massachusetts. Okay, so this is a big deal. In fact, the data suggests that people are buying more lottery tickets than pizzas in the US. Okay, so it's a big data. Okay, but thankfully for us, when it comes to tax, it's easy, right? I know I have gambling winnings. Gambling winnings is $5,000. So I know they've also given me the data here, so I don't have to bother this kind of becomes $5,000. Now, in this sum, we've not taken it a level below that. So, we're not asking you to give me the civil income. But if they would, then I would have taken note of this data, right? My gambling winnings was $5,000, but my losses was 7,300. So, what would be the data? So, for me right now, for this sum, that is irrelevant. But if I wanted, I could have converted it into a taxable sim, but this would have become a part of guys. How much is this data relevant to me in the longer run? If I want to fill up my form, how am I going to make use of the $7,300? Anybody? How? Mitali, unmute. How? How are you going to take this
Okay, ma'am, we can
$7,300?
adjust till like the only the gains we made of the lotteries. Like we can adjust 5,000 out of the total loss, and rest will gonna be certain percentage of our AGI.
Where
We
are you
can.
going to take this 5,000?
Where is 1,000?
So you're telling me that in gambling winnings in 1040, we are going to report 5,000, right? Where are you going to take the deduction for 5,000? So it is true that gambling losses would be restricted to gambling winnings this year. But where are you going to take this deduction? Above
Itemized
the line.
deduction.
It is a part of itemized deduction. It is
Yes.
not a part of adjustment. So if you're taking a standard deduction, you lose the right to claim these losses. So in this
Yes.
example here, I'm not bothered. I will simply ignore this data. For me, it's irrelevant at the moment because my job is to just give you the data about the gross income. There is another 10, so I've taken use of this data. Form 1099G from last year's state income tax refund. Now, see, I'll just check up whether my knowledge is correct or not. So I've got the $60 refund, but I know I'm not going to tax it. Tax is zero. Why? Because I did not itemize last year. If I go back and I reconfirm, I have used standard deduction for both the years. Even last year, I took standard deduction. So if they've given me this data, why? Because now they've told me that the 1099G is from last year's. So all that I wanted to check was the refund pertaining to last year or not? Because I know that last year they standardized. So yes, the return was pertaining to last year, and since we did not itemize last year, we did not get any extra benefit. So no part of this is going to be taxable. So I now confirm that this is correct. I can very coolly write 5,000 here. I can very coolly write 3,400 here. I can very coolly write $270 here. But what about this? I'm still not very clear about this because they've given me one more form W2. Let me see what data they gave. So there's also another form, which is W2 from Springwell Family Restaurant for her daughter Terry. Terry turned 17. So this girl had a summer job. And on that summer job, she earned $2,500 as compensation, on which there was some withholdings, and she got the final figure. Can anybody tell me? This is a googly in this question, okay? So tell me, how do I treat this $2,500? Anybody? Anybody? But can you see with Ali that she has got the money after the deduction? Yes or no? She has got the money after all the federal taxes are withheld. I am not trying to confuse you. I'm just so everybody must have an opinion on this, okay? You cannot be blank. According to you, what should I be doing with this data? According to you, what should I be doing with this data? Okay, so this answers a lot many questions. In this example, first of all, tell me, does it make sense for Terry to? Okay, there are two, three questions that start from this. First question: is the child a dependent? Is the child a dependent? The answer is yes. I do have a dependent, but do I have to club that person's income in my income? Do I have to do that in the US? If I'm filing a married filing jointly couple, I'm not supposed to take anybody else's income apart from me and my spouse. So definitely I'm sure of one thing, that I have completed my form. So this should not include 2,500, and I should have $107,000 that I should be reporting here. But I'm curious, what do I do with this, guys? What do I do with this? Anybody? Can anybody tell me what do I do with this? See, ideally, now that is why a dependent has to file his or her own return. because this is an earned income. And if I don't file my return, if I am Terry Jones and if I don't file my return, how do I get this money back as a refund? I need a refund of this $500, isn't it? Why? Because my standard deduction is 1300 or earned income plus 450, whichever is higher. My earned income is 2500 and I will include and I will include 450. So ideally, I should not be paying any tax till the time I'm earning $2,950. Hence, I'm going to get this as a refund. How do I do that? By filing my own dependent's income tax return. Is this clear to everybody? Why is it that a dependent? And here, if there's a lot of unearned income for the child, then we have something called a kiddie tax, which you have to pay. Okay, at parents' marginal income tax rate, you can either do it on the dependent's return or you could do it in the parents' return also. But have you understood all of those questions about what is a dependence return? Why are we learning dependent standard deduction? Now, see, this is a very innocuous way of them putting this data in your return. Even though, if you look at it, historically, CPA exams have not tested the concept of dependent standard return and the dependence return so much. But they have innocuously just put this data for you and just understand the significance of this data. Because, see, in this question, it is just one cell. But what if you would have something called AGI, total gross income, and then the AGI, and then the itemized deduction, and then the taxable income deduction? So all those cells will become wrong if this figure is wrong. So one thing, be very clear that when it's wages, salary, tips, any kind of an earned income, it stems only from the spouse's income. You cannot club any of the dependents' income in this. Okay? Uh, was it a good question, guys? But do you think it was a difficult question? Tell me that. Was it a good question? The answer is yes. But do you think it was a difficult question? But we're very honest and tell me how many of you actually think you would have got all of them correct? Tell me, is there were always areas where you could make, and the silly mistakes happen when you rush. I am 100% sure that you know everything. Everything is known by everybody. There's nothing here that you've not understood. But just because you've placed the data in a format where they can mislead you, there is possibility that you may be misled. Series E bonds was a classic area where you could have made a mistake. Many of you actually did. The next mistake was dividends, giving you some foreign corporation dividend. People may get confused. Then is 20. So it's a simple 5 cell sim, but at least 3 cells. So I'm sure this would have been good. Okay. But imagine if I want to make it more complicated, I would give you a different year for standardized deduction, and I might give you a different year for the tax refund. And you may get confused. So the only thing that I want, so anybody who comes out of the hall and tells me, ma'am, I finished my paper in 3 hours, I get very scared. Okay? Because it is not that I doubt your capability to do it, but I'm only worried about whether you've been able to pick up the traps correctly or not. Because for that, you need to slow down, guys. Okay, you need to slow down, be highly alert. So remember the time and the trap problem. Do not overstep these. So two things are very important for sim. One is a very, very efficient time management. Okay, I'm going to talk about it at the end of the other two sims that I'm going to discuss. The time management is very, very important if you want to crack the paper and complete it on time. And the other is, of course, slow down. Be calm, slow down, have a very high self-esteem, and be confident in your exam. Okay, don't carry the baggage, as I call it, both emotional as well as whatever, the exam pressure. Okay, anybody, any question? This is the most recent released AI CPA sim till now. I think they're going to come up with another. I mean, if they are going to change the sim by the end of this before you guys sit for the exam, I'm going to track it. You guys also track it. But if they come up with that, you should definitely do that. Okay.